Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the BJJ Foxcast. I am your host, Alex Martinez. And today I'm really excited to have my new friend, Matt Guffey, on the show. He's a brown belt under Caio Terra. He's also the owner of Victory Submission and Strength. Did I get that right? Victory Submission Strength?
Victory Submission Strength, no and.
I got it. Victory Submission Strength, and certified strength and conditioning coach, a guru when it comes to all things staying on the mat longer. And Matt, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's start there, man. Let's start with the business of it. What do you because we always go into like the meat and potatoes, like how to lift things and how to stretch and do all this stuff. But tell me about your business. Like, where did it start, how it's going, and where do you want to go from here?
Yeah. So as far as the business's origin, I originally started coaching hockey. That was where I started. And then COVID hit, everything shut down. I had to pivot. I had always thought to myself, if I were going to do something that wasn't hockey related, strength and conditioning would be it. That's really how I made it as far as I did in hockey, which admittedly wasn't that far. I mean, I played in college. I didn't play professionally, I didn't play professionally or anything.
Yeah.
But strength and conditioning was really how I even made it there, right? Like, I started hockey really late. I started when I was 12 years old. Most of my teammates in college started when they were 4. So I had a lot of ground to catch up on. And I was fortunate enough to have a lot of really, really great strength coaches growing up. We kind of planted that seed, and like I said, it always had been in the background. Like, if I did something else, that'd be what I did. So COVID hit, everything shut down. I had to pivot. I started teaching hockey on Zoom, which was weird and is a whole nother conversation. But I needed to find a way to make those lessons. I need to find a way to make those lessons valuable for the people who are paying for them. And so I started to just give them some things that I had picked up over the years from my own strength coaches, like, just whether it was balance or coordination or, if there's like some strength stuff that we could do, we'd do it. And sure enough, after like 3 or 4 months, people were like, I used to not be able to do this, but now I can. And that's when the light bulb went off. And I was like, I could do this. Like, I got a knack for it. I could definitely do it. And so I had one of my former players hire me to help him. This, again, all during COVID. So I was doing it all remote. And so I programmed for him. He was preparing to go to college. And then he got one other person to join. And then he got a couple other people to join. And then things started to loosen up a little bit. And we got our own, we started renting from a place. We were working out outside. And it was the whole COVID thing. Like, everybody went through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all the hockey players I was working with moved, because that's what they do. They come back for 4 months and then they leave for the season. And I was like, shit, like my business is gone. And so I thought to myself, I was like, well, who do I enjoy spending time with? And at this point, I had been training jiu-jitsu for 5 years or so every day. And, I'm like a bona fide addict. And it's like, I mean, it makes sense. Like, I hear these complaints all the time, like, this hurts, that hurts, I can't do this, I'm not strong enough to do this, I got injured, or all the common jiu-jitsu tropes. And so I was like, well, this is the next logical step. I'm just going to work with jiu-jitsu athletes because those are the people that I like hanging out with anyway. And so we got
it's kind of a year-round thing too, right? I mean,
it never ends.
Season. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. It never ends. And I mean, from a business perspective, it's kind of the perfect fit, right? There is no off season. And if you're anything like I am, and I think you are, you want to do jiu-jitsu for the rest of your life. And strength training is a way to make sure that happens. And so I feel like it's really blown up ever since we switched. We still work with some hockey players that come back for the summer, but like, we changed our name from Victory High Performance to Victory Submission Strength. And so we've like gone full bore on the grappling side of things. And so that's kind of where the business is at. And then as far as where I want it to go is, eventually we'd like to open up our own jiu-jitsu gym and, keep that kind of under the same umbrella. And ultimately I'd love to coach business like that. That's really where I think I can make my biggest impact is teaching jiu-jitsu gym owners how to business. And I think that's sorely missed in our community, and it's something that I'm really looking forward to digging my claws into as we continue to grow, and I've got more bandwidth to handle a big project like that.
Yeah, no, I love that. I actually I partnered up with a mastermind group when I opened my academy in 2000, like in the heart of, of COVID. And they really, like, my first call was to Samir Chantre, because we're under the Aries
Mhm.
umbrella association. And my second call was to these guys at Academy Kings, and they literally taught us how to, how to market, how to sell, how to deliver, how to
Yeah.
retain, all that stuff. Things like you said. A lot of people that go into jujitsu, that open jujitsu academies, they look at, oh well, if I open this academy and it's X amount per square foot, all I need is X amount of students in order to keep my doors open. But the reality hits them, like, hey, I got to feed my family with this also, right? And
Yeah.
then if you don't, I think the advantage that we had was we started with the business mindset,
Mhm.
and and the passion for jujitsu and helping people. We knew we're in the people business, but it's the people business, right? So yeah, I think some people will go into it not thinking that way, and then they end up going in that direction, and now their students are looking at them like, hey, he's never talked this way before, right? So, and people like you who can guide us through those conversations, like, hey, I totally understand that you love it here. I love it here too, but I've got to feed my family, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's great that you joined a mastermind. Like I feel like that's maybe taboo isn't the right word, but not enough people talk about that. And like I'm now a part of two masterminds, and I extract great value from other people having made the mistakes before me, right? Like there's a lot to be said for paying somebody to make the mistakes before you do. And so that's great that you did that. I'm really happy to hear that you thought about that. You thought about hiring somebody.
Well, it wasn't something I thought of on my own. It was really cool because the Aries Association as a whole really embraces, like, white belt owners, right? I'm not saying white belts that are owning gyms, like black belts own the academies, but white belt as far as business goes.
Yeah.
And they really took us under their umbrella. They brought us to some of their functions where, it was just like, an owners group. And one of the speakers was a guy from Academy Kings, the guys that we use, that we joined. And I'm sitting there, like, thinking, well, this is a no brainer, like they've got to,
Yeah.
they got to figure it out. And when we joined, it was like a community of academy owners all making these mistakes, like you said. And it's fantastic. It's like, we're on four calls a week, with
That's
these
great.
guys for different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't be happier. So it's really cool that you're going to get into that. You're going to help a lot of people, man.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Are you going to focus on the jiu-jitsu side, or are you going to focus on strength and conditioning side? What are you going to focus on?
I would like to focus on the jujitsu side of things.
Mm.
I enjoy strength and conditioning, but I feel like I can make the biggest impact with like the jujitsu community that
Yeah.
way by focusing on the jujitsu side of things.
Yeah. So let's get into the strength and conditioning. So you're, from what I've seen on your social media, and you're very generous with your information. So I really appreciate that. That's really, you have a lot of good stuff on your Insta.
I'll give it all away.
Yeah. You're very generous. But you were talking about like the three pillars. You were talking about flexibility, strength, and power. As far as, the three pillars for, I guess, I know this is like, I know I'm going to get it wrong, but I'm going to take a stab at it. For functional um grappling, basically, right? Am I on the right track there?
Yeah, you're on the right track. It's mobility, power, and strength would be the three pillars. So just to clarify, the difference between flexibility and mobility. Flexibility is like the physiological extensibility of tissue,
Mm.
right? Mobility is your like strength through full range of motion. What can you control,
Got it.
right?
Yep.
Because I know a lot of flexible people who aren't very strong and therefore are not very mobile, right?
Mm.
Because they can't actually get into the positions when they want to. They're just put into they get pancaked by somebody else, right?
That's right here. This guy.
So mobility is your foundation, right? Think of it like the analogy we'll use is like what we call the highway analogy. So if mobility is your foundation, like you can't get your car from point A to point B if there's a bunch of potholes,
Mm.
right? You got to have a good foundation. If you think of like those potholes as movement limitations, previous injuries, anything that's going to keep you from getting to the place you want to get. So for those watching, if I want to lift my arm up over my head, if I can't for whatever reason, if I've tore my labrum, or there's, something going on in my shoulder that prevents me from doing that, I have to go somewhere else to get it. Right. When I have to go somewhere else to get it, then I start developing those compensatory patterns that eventually lead to injury. I should say compensation in and of itself is not a bad thing. Like if I trip and fall and catch myself, that's a compensation, right? Not necessarily a bad thing until it is, right? And so when you have those movement limitations, you're forced to take alternate routes, go off-roading, so to speak, right? It's only a matter of time before the parts that are now doing the job start to break down because they weren't intended to do that job. So that's the first pillar.
Gotcha. So is it like would you consider that like an overuse injury on a part of the body that's not supposed to be used that way?
Yeah. So the I guess one of the most common examples I can think of, actually, it starts in people's feet. So when I'm looking at, like, when I bring somebody into the gym and we go through the movement assessment, we do a full, it's what's called a CARS assessment. So controlled articular rotations. We look at how each joint moves by itself, because the theory, I guess, is independence before interdependence, meaning the joint has to move properly by itself before you ask it to move in a chain, right? Everything happens in chains. You think about like a baseball pitch, right? It starts in the ground.
Yep.
You transfer our weight from one foot to the other, rotate the hips, core stays tight. All that energy comes up into the shoulder, into the elbow, into the ball, and then to the catcher, right? So we look at how each of those joints move by themselves. And almost always, when we get down to people's feet, we realize that their toes are completely immobile. And oftentimes that's because our jobs requires that we wear shoes a lot, especially ones with like really narrow toe boxes. But in any case, that's one area where, like, if you lack the toe mobility, if you're unable to, move your big toe, or if you don't have the range of motion in that big toe, then that has to go somewhere, right? It has to come from somewhere. And then it inevitably goes to the ankle, and then the knee, and then the hip. And then you see a lot of people like low back problems can almost always tell that their feet don't work the way they're supposed to work.
Wow.
Right. And so it just works its way up. So eventually, you compensate at the ankle, then the knee, then the hip, then the back, and then the back tends to be the place where things start to get a little hairy.
Yeah. I actually started wearing zero shoes.
That's great.
I just wanted to, it's about maybe 2 years ago, I just wanted to get better at jujitsu. I wanted strong feet. And someone said, well, quit wearing shoes. I'm like, well, I can't quit wearing shoes, but I can find something, that's close enough. And one thing, the first thing I noticed is my knee pain went away.
Yeah.
I had this chronic knee pain. I thought, I'm old, bad meniscus, whatever. But no, it was just like you said, it started in my feet, and I was compensating for a lot of things. And my physical therapist, Greg McClarty, great guy. He has freakish toe movement, freakish. And he says, to your point, he says, it all starts right here. And if you can't move this around, then like you said, it something's got to give at some point. But he really didn't quite articulate it all the way down to the lower back pain. But that makes a lot of sense.
And I guess there's two things that I want to touch on here. The first is, our feet are the first layer of communication we have with the earth, right? Everything beneath us, like every time you step on something, there's information being sent to your brain and then back. Right? Is this an okay place to be? Whatever that is. So if you're unable to control your feet, the messages aren't getting all the way there, right? They're blurry.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. The second is, from a jiu-jitsu perspective, if you think about next time you're at your academy, look around at how many people cannot, inside control, have the ball of their foot and their knee on the ground at the same time. Look around. I almost guarantee you see more than half of the people with just their big toes just kind of like standing on top, like just like this.
Yeah.
Right. Because it is such an underrated, it's probably the most overlooked joint as far as mobility goes for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I've got a guy who trains with us, black belt, phenomenal athlete. I was watching a split squat and I'm like, something looks weird here. And I come looking around. And I take him off to the side, and I'm like, can you lift your toes? Can you let's play with this a little bit. Can you like get your knee on the ground with the ball of your foot? And he's like, no, I can't do it. Like my toes just don't want to go that way. And I'm like, I start telling him about this. I'm like, think about trying to hold side control. He starts laughing. He's like, I can't hold side control for shit. And I'm like, yeah, this is why. You got no base. You got nothing on the ground. You can't push.
There's a world-class athlete probably. Yeah. With that deficit. That's interesting.
Yeah. He's like, side control is my worst position. I get there. I have to go somewhere else immediately because I just can't hold it.
Wow. That's interesting, man. So, for those folks that are listening and are like, okay, yeah, I can't do that either. What's a good exercise that you would recommend to start getting that mobility?
So there are several ways that you can go about this. First is you just want to restore that connection first. And so oftentimes I'll just have people hold their 4 toes down, like physically block them with their hand and just focus on trying to lift the big toe.
Mm.
And you might do that and hold for a couple seconds at the top and then let it down and then hold for a couple seconds at the top. You can do the same thing the other way. You could you could lift all your toes, hold the 4 toes up, and then just press your big toe down.
Mm.
Right. So that'd be the opposite end of that. You do things like towel grabs. So, just like picking stuff up with your feet.
Yep.
And, pulling it off the ground and then grabbing it in your hand. You could do that over and over. Those are all right. Those are all great.
I do that. I do that a lot because my wife yells at me because I leave my clothing on the floor.
Same. If you could only see where I'm standing right now, it's so that's all great. And then I guess to get into like some of the deeper level mobility stuff, this is applicable to any joint in any direction that you need range of motion, right? Because the cars stuff is going to give you better control, but it's not ultimately going to open up anything, right? You gotta the acronym is PAILS and RAILS, and PAILS stands for progressive angular isometric loading. You don't need to remember that. RAILS, regressive tissue or regressive angular isometric loading. And so all that refers to, if you talk about just the progressive and regressive tissue, like if I were to use my bicep as an example or my elbow as an example, the progressive tissue is on like the big angle. So if I were to like bend my elbow like this, the big angle is on this side, the outside of my elbow.
Yeah.
Right. So the progressive tissue is all around here, like my tricep, all through here. Okay. And then the regressive tissue is on the inside, like the small angle.
Yep.
So if we think about that in terms like the big toe, what I'll have people do is like put their big toe up against like a wall or a box or something, right? So that it's at its end range. You couldn't possibly get it any further. And then the first step is to hold for 2 minutes. So there's your passive stretch, right?
Yep. We
do that to access deeper levels of tissue because invariably you start to stretch something, your stretch response goes off and it's like, hey, ouch, I don't like that. And it wants you to back off, right? But if you hold that for 2 minutes and you just relax into it and let yourself kind of be there, eventually, you can stretch a little bit further because your body knows that this is a safe thing to do and you're fine. And, it's gonna relax a little bit. So that's the first step, is that 2 minute stretch. And then PAILS, so you're gonna press toward the progressive tissue. So like if the foot's on the ground, the big toe's on the box, it's what's underneath your big toe is the progressive tissue. So you're gonna press down like you're trying to move the box with just your big toe at progressively higher intensities. So start with 20, then 40, 60, 80, safest, greatest effort, as hard as you can, pressing into the box. You're not going to be able to go anywhere, obviously, because it's heavy, or the wall, it's immobile. Yeah. And then after that, safest, greatest effort, pressing down into the box, you're going to go the other way, the rails part. So now you're working the top side of the toe. Yeah. And you're going to try your best to pull the toe away from whatever it is you're blocking it with. You shouldn't be able to go anywhere from there. If you could, you weren't at end range to start with. And so it kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
So that's ultimately what it is. 2 minute stretch, progressively higher intensities on the progressive side for PAILS, and then max intensity on the rails side, the regressive tissue. And then you can, repeat that a couple times. And that will help not just increase the range of motion, but also you're exposing the joint to high levels of force under control. Right? If I were to extrapolate that, say we went to the shoulder, for example, right? A kimura is just forced internal rotation. That's all it is. You're internally rotating the shoulder until it can't go any further, and then a little bit further, and then people tap, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not ready for that, that's when tissue is going to break down, right? Like that's how that's how any tissue breaks, not just human tissue, but any tissue. Like if I use just a piece of paper as an example, I start to tear, or I start to pull on it, but I don't pull that hard, nothing happens. I pull a little bit harder, nothing happens. I pull a little bit harder, and then it tears.
Yeah.
Human tissue, same way. So this whole Pales Rails thing helps expose us to high levels of force under control at that end range. So it's not the first time you've been there when somebody else does it to you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way. I just shoot, man. I just thought tap early. But you can actually condition your body to withstand. I mean, obviously you do want to tap early anyway, but you can really I guess you could condition your body to be able to handle it for, more years, I guess, of twisting and turning.
Yeah. Yeah. And listen, as much as we want to tap early, sometimes you can't, or sometimes it comes on quick, right? Especially with a lot of the guys now are just really high level competitors. You don't always have that opportunity. And if you don't, and you're not conditioned for it, I mean, that's ultimately where injuries happen. So
yeah, no kidding. So I got to ask you, man, how did you go from a new hockey player to a college level hockey player in what, 5 years? 5 years?
A little bit longer than that.
Okay.
Most hockey players start college at 20.
Okay, gotcha.
So there's a gap, a couple gap years.
Mm-hmm.
I just lived at the rink.
Yeah.
Honestly, I lived at the rink. I lived in the gym. Like I said, I had a lot of good strength coaches growing up. I knew that I was going to have to do something to separate myself.
Yeah.
I wasn't the biggest kid. I wasn't the most skilled, but I pride myself on being the hardest worker. I was the first one to show up, the last one to leave. I spent extra time in the gym. I have teammates from college that, as far as I know, to this day, have not worked out since the last time they worked out with me, because I was like, if you're going to be here for an hour, I'm going to be here for an hour and 10 minutes. Yeah. And we're just going to keep on going. And I'm a competitive motherfucker. So
I love it. Yeah, I can tell. Yeah. Yeah. That's wild, dude. Yeah. Cause, if you take like, college wrestlers, college hockey players, college baseball players, they were playing club ball and doing all that stuff, at single, 4 years old, 5 years old, and then on. And there was always like, there's always like now, with the last 10 years, there's been like specialized coaches, right? Some kids really focus on just baseball, and some kids just focus on just hockey. And that's a lot of competition. I've never actually asked this question. How many people make a hockey roster?
Depends on the team, but anywhere between 20 and 25.
Yeah, that's not a lot of people.
No.
Yeah,
No,
that's
pretty
wild.
small.
Yeah. So tell me about how do hockey injuries compare to jiu-jitsu injuries? I'm sure there's more impact, right?
Yeah, more. I guess more like blunt force impact,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Obviously, like body on body, and then body on like boards or body on ice.
Yeah.
But I would say the injuries are pretty similar. I mean, shoulders and knees tend to be the ones that go the most.
Yeah.
And that's excluding teeth, right? Because that's what the most hockey players are known for, at least having some missing teeth. I have all of mine. I almost lost mine. That's another story. But in any case, yeah, shoulders and knees, I think, are probably the most common ones. Definitely in jiu-jitsu, those are definitely the most common ones.
Yeah.
But I think it makes sense that they are also in hockey that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So so you said mobility is like the foundation of the strength. What would be next? Would it be strength or power? What would you go for next?
We typically, so if I'm breaking this down the way we do our lifts, we do our mobility stuff first, then we do like our movement prep, just kind of like moving in different directions, left, right, up, down, rotate, do all the stuff, get ourselves warm. We do that to like build a more robust athletic profile, right? Because a good athlete's a good athlete. It's going to translate really well, no matter the sport.
Yeah.
And then the very first thing we do after that is all our power stuff, because that's when you're fresh, and you got to be able to execute at max intensity in order for any of the power stuff to work. Because if you do all that at the end, you're inevitably not going to go as fast as you possibly can. And if you're not going as fast as you possibly can, then it's not power work. So power is the next thing. And the way, if we're coming back to that highway analogy, the way I describe it is like raising the speed limit on the highway, right? We're trying to get from point A to point B quicker. trying to get the synapse from the brain to the limbs to go quicker. And we do that through a variety of ways. The first of which would be, if they're eligible, sprints. Not everybody's eligible, depending on age, training history, injury history, current, bumps, bruises, all that stuff. But if they can, we like them to sprint because it's the fastest thing a human can do. There's nothing faster. You can't recreate that kind of speed in any other movement. So sprints, if they can't sprint, we'll bike sprint them, but very short duration, like 7 to 10 seconds max effort, as fast as humanly possible. Again, just to get the impulse to go from brain to feet or brain to hands as quickly as possible.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you use Aerodyne bike or do you use just a regular?
We like the Aerodyne bike.
Okay.
Yeah. Mostly because the harder you work, the harder it gets. And so it's it's a fun tool to use. I know.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, if any of my athletes are listening to this, they would disagree with how about how much I like the bike, but go ahead.
Yeah, but so I grew up, a runner. I was in the military. I ran a lot, and I stopped fairly recently. I guess oh gosh, it's been a while. But I used to run quite a bit, like 2010, 2011, and I really haven't done a whole lot of running, much less sprinting. But when you say someone doesn't qualify, is that somebody that's injured? Is that somebody that's just too old, or who does not qualify?
Some of both.
Okay.
So there are some caveats here. We do have some people who are like over the age of 40 that do sprint, but it's because they never stopped sprinting. Like they played field sports, maybe they played field sports in college, and then afterwards they just like have always done it. And so they're still conditioned to do it. If you take like 20 years off, it's probably not the best use of your time.
Yeah.
Probably not the safest thing to do, right? The last thing I want is somebody's Achilles snapping in my gym. Like that would really suck.
Yeah.
So age definitely is one, as much as people don't like to hear it. So, we've got some people that are like, I want to sprint. I'm like, it's not worth it. I promise you. And they're like, but I can do it. I'm like, you might be able to, but I don't want to find out here. I don't know if that's the right thing to do. And ultimately our goal is just to keep people safe.
Yeah.
If we feel at any point like something is going to be dangerous, we back off, because it's the whole idea is to be healthy for the thing you love to do, not just for the sake of sprinting. So age is definitely one of them. Injury history is another one. If they're currently injured, I wouldn't sprint, even if it's an upper body thing, honestly, because like I said, it's the most explosive thing you can do. And adding the most explosive thing you can do to any injured limb is inherently going to make it worse.
Yeah.
So those I would say are the two biggest things. That being said, I mean, we've got one of our athletes, she came to us 6 or 7 months post ACL, MCL, and meniscus all in one shot.
Whoa.
She is actually now interning with us, and then soon to be coaching. But she is now sprinting.
Wow.
She is like gained full, she's back,
Wow.
She's able to do it. And that's been really, really cool to see. So yeah, I mean, it's not a death sentence. Like if you do get injured, we just have to progress it the right way and, make sure that we're doing it safely. And oftentimes that might be a little bit slower than people want to do it, but we can do it. That's definitely possible.
Okay. So I've had a meniscus injury on each one of my knees. I've had both scoped, and somehow, even after years of running, I still have decent meniscus. Awesome. But the injuries happened in a very, like, I don't know. I guess the word, I don't even know what the word is. Very benign motion. Very
innocuous, maybe.
Yeah. Didn't seem like much. Like there was one where I was trying to hold. I had someone's back, and I was just doing what I normally do with my legs, and then all of a sudden I felt a tightness in that time was my right knee, and next thing you know, I'm limping and it's swelling up, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? I got a MRI, and I had a bucket handle tear in my meniscus. What is it about the meniscus that what makes it tear? I know that's a stupid question, but I mean, it doesn't feel like I did anything. I've done a lot of stupid things, and my meniscus is fine, but then it just tears with a simple, I don't know. It's weird.
I don't know exactly like if there's one particular movement. I would imagine, kind of like the knees buckling in probably isn't the best for it.
Mm.
Um, it's funny you say right knee meniscus. I'm also dealing with something with that right now. It's not a tear. It's a meniscocapsular tear. So it's basically the meniscus is torn away from the joint capsule,
Oh,
which is not the end of the world. It sounds worse than it is.
okay.
I don't need surgery. It will reattach. It's just I feel that tightness in my knee. Same thing that you felt, right?
Yeah.
But I had an MRI done, and there it was. And they're like, yep, it's not attached anymore. And it's not very big, but if I keep going on it, like it's due, like it could be a problem. So, and mine was the same thing, totally innocuous position. I was in kind of like a tall kneeling, or I guess collapsed kneel position. I was like both my feet and my knees on the ground, just kind of like, how most people watch class.
Yeah.
And then I got up and I was like, oh, that's weird. And I felt that tightness and I was like, I don't know. And I kind of shook it around and then it was fine.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I would say like the knees kind of buckling in, that like knee valgus for any strength coaches out there. And then like deep knee flexion probably also could contribute to it, because that's typically where I feel the most discomfort at this point. So yeah, and then I guess tibial rotation in like deep flexion would probably also do it. So like a heel hook basically
Yeah.
is like
Oh yeah.
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 Yeah,
I tap quick to those, man.
yeah. As
Yeah.
soon as it's not worth it.
Yeah, man. So, real quick, I'm very curious. When did you start jujitsu? Were you in college when you started jujitsu?
No, I just got done with college. I guess not just got done with college. I got done with college and then I moved out to the Bay Area, and I had been coaching for a year or two with the Sharks, and I wasn't playing hockey anymore. And I was like, I had some experience with jujitsu a long time ago, before I, kind of in between high school and college while I was playing junior hockey, and just like very brief, half a summer, not even. I learned like a really basic armbar, and it was an MMA gym, so it was like a lot of striking and wrestling and stuff like that. But um, when I was out here in the Bay, I'd been coaching for a couple years, maybe a year and a half, and I was like, I really like, I want to learn something new. I miss that kind of team atmosphere. I know it's an individual sport, but like if I were going to do something, that's probably what I would do. My brother, who is currently in the military, he was he boxed, and I was like, there's no way that motherfucker's gonna keep beating me. So I'm gonna find something that I can do. And so so I picked up jujitsu, and I saw Caio was right around the corner from where I lived, and I was like, I'd be silly not to not to study there. And so I've been there ever since.
That's cool. Now, Caio is like, I mean, phenom, super, super, amazing competitor. I mean, I don't know if he competes anymore. He kind of shows some flashes of maybe, teasing us with a fight to win here or there. But what's it like, in that environment where, a guy that's so talented is is it intimidating? Is it like welcoming? What kind of environment is it?
The gym itself, I mean, I train under Vitor Pascual, who is one of Caio's instructors, black belts.
Yeah.
So I don't have as much contact with Caio as most people do, because I train in the mornings. Actually, we have a common friend. I used to train with D when
Oh yeah,
D Cardozo
he's
when
my
he was
boy.
here. Yeah. So I mentioned I was going to be here today, and he was really excited. So yeah, D and I trained together for a long time under Vitor Pascual, and Vitor is the kindest human being on the planet. I just love learning from him. He was in my wedding, like we're very, very close. His way of teaching Caio's curriculum, I think, is just unparalleled. There's no, with all due respect to Caio, I don't think there's a better teacher at that gym. He just gets it, and I'm really thankful for that. So I would say, like in the mornings, the vibe is impeccable. I love going. It's such a blast.
Yeah. And I've met Vitor a couple times as a referee.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, really cool dude. And
Yeah.
I
He
didn't,
comes down there a lot.
yeah, he does. And
Yeah.
I didn't know who he was until D told me. He goes, "Yeah, that's my old professor." I'm like, "Oh crap," So I kind of geeked out on that. But yeah, I've been following Caio and that whole school since I started jujitsu, back in the day. But yeah, that's I've always been curious because I've never been in that environment, so that's kind of cool. But so you start jujitsu. Did you ever beat your brother up?
Yeah, we'll train every time we get together. We'll typically train somewhere, and he's done like the combative stuff, and he's bigger than me, so he'll like kind of brute force himself through some things. But at this point, I think I've been training so much longer. I don't think I have much of a problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you're
Now,
probably more specialized than he. He's
yeah, for
got
sure. Like I don't
a
expect him
yeah.
berimbolo or anything. Like I go upside down and take his back all the time, but
I love it. I love it. Are you still competing and everything? Well, I mean, probably not with your knee right now, but
not right now. I was supposed to do the Orange County Open this weekend, but I pulled out because of my knee. I probably won't compete the rest of the year, and just kind of like rehab it and get everything where it's supposed to be, and then I'll restart back in January. But I think I competed 12 or 13 times this year. I got third at American Nationals.
nice.
Actually, I think this knee injury was from that tournament. I did the absolute, and somebody dove on a toe hold and kind of like ripped my leg the wrong way,
Yeah.
and felt a pop, and I was like, I don't know, that kind of sucks, and tap there, and anyways, I digress. I love to compete. It's a blast. I think it is such an underrated skill to be able to compete. Well, how do I say this? I think in jiu-jitsu, maybe in sports in general, people get so wound up around trying to win that they don't let themselves learn from anything.
Yeah.
And I say that as somebody who did it too. Like as a white belt, I came from hockey where it was like win, 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 like I have to win.
Yeah.
And so I just like get so wound up. And yeah, I won sometimes, but I lost sometimes. And there was definitely like this weird gut feeling where you're just like scared shitless, and you're trying to like figure it all out. And it wasn't until I got my brown belt really that I was like, I don't care. Like, not that I don't care about winning, because I want to win, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do my best every single time, but I'm not going to beat myself if I lose. I'm going to just learn from it. Like, it's just data, and it's okay. Because really, unless it's adult black belt worlds, nobody gives a shit.
You're absolutely
It's
right.
fine.
Yeah. except I really do care. but
Yeah.
but I love what you said about data, because there's people who will say, oh, I can't compete in this one because the stars aren't aligned. I can't compete in this one because I've got a trip coming up. I can't, and they're like, but I'll do Masters Worlds at the end of the year. I'm like, you don't have any information. Like,
No.
okay, so if you're in your 30s, okay, you might be able to get away with that. But as you creep into your 40s, and I'm 50, I'll be 51 this year. My body does so many different things between matches now. Like, I talk to my trainer all the time about this, and we'll do a tournament. He's like, "How did you feel?" And I don't tell him how I felt during the match, before the match. It's like between matches, I'm like, dude, I had this pain going across my shoulders and I just couldn't shake it. And then because I got a little cold, and he's like, okay, this is what you need to do between matches, because my body is changing. My body's breaking down. As much as I try to keep it healthy, it breaks down. I'm sorry. It's just getting older.
Yeah.
But like you said, if you don't collect that data, you'll never know. I mean, can you imagine what my body does between the division and the open? It falls a fucking apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you don't have that information, you're going to fall apart, and you're going to basically quit.
Absolutely.
For the open. So yeah.
Yeah. And there are so many possibilities in jiu-jitsu. It would be impossible to account for all of them in just the training you do in the gym.
Yeah.
Because we have the same training partners, we fall into the same patterns, you learn their tendencies. And then when you go to competition, it all changes. Things feel weird because people do things differently, different techniques, different intensity. There's so many different variables that unless you are conditioned for them, and the only way to condition yourself for competition is competition.
Yeah.
You're just bound to get, hung up. And so I think it's such a valuable tool. And one of the things that one of my training partners, Carlos, when I first came in as a white belt, he was a blue belt turning purple, and he now is a black belt and teaches with Vitor. But you know, he told me, and I'll never forget, he was like, I don't train to get good for the competition. I go to the competition so I can come back here and train. I was like, that's an interesting way to put it. And I was like, because I go to the competition, something doesn't work, and now I got something to come back here and learn. And I'm like, fuck, that's a good idea. So that really, I think, just looking at it as data, you know, like, winning cannot be the goal. Performance should be the goal at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a good Kobe Bryant clip circulating around. It pops up on my feed every once in a while. And the reporter asked him, like, is it the love of winning or the fear of losing that motivates you? And he's like, neither. Because if I'm caught up in trying to win or caught up in not losing, I'm not focused on the thing in front of me. I'm thinking at things that haven't happened yet. And that really hit me. I was like, damn, like that's it. You know, and that's coming from a straight up killer, like somebody who was, you know, really, really heralded as like the consummate winner. Yeah. You know, somebody was like, don't even think about winning.
Yeah. And he had a very, you know, I think a lot of people at that level have a very interesting perspective on success and failure, right? Like you said, it's data. It's data. Yep. Like I didn't fail. I figured out how to not to do something, right? Yeah. I didn't win. I just worked harder than the next guy, you know, and by working harder, it's not like, you know, killing yourself in a gym. It's like just winning the little battles every second of the match, right? Yep. I tell my competitors all the time, like, you don't have to be the best in the world to be the best in the world. You got to be the best one on that mat for the time allotted. Yep. If you can do that, you can come up with a couple wins that you probably shouldn't win.
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
If you focus too much, like you said, on the outcome, man, top of the podium, bro, you still got 6 matches left. You can't be thinking top of the podium right now.
Yeah. You got to think of just one.
Yeah. Be on time and be warmed up and be on weight. That's it. That's what you can control at that point. Yep. But yeah. So what do you do for folks that are getting a little bit older that still want to compete? Do you focus a lot on heavy lifting? Do you focus a lot on mobility? I mean, obviously mobility, but I've been reading a lot about just lifting heavier, and I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm in over my head with this conversation, so you're gonna have to run with it. But what do you think?
Yeah. So, I mean, all of it. Yes. The answer is yes to everything you just said. I would say if we're now kind of moving into like the strength pillar, if we're coming back to that, highway analogy, you know, mobility is our foundation. Power is the speed limit. Let's raise the speed limit. Strength is like the width of the highway. So more lanes, more output, right? More lanes, more muscle fibers, stronger, right? So like that's kind of the mindset that I have about that. As far as, I mean, and this isn't exclusive to older grapplers at all. This is something that we do with, you know, our 20-something adult level athletes. But, you know, as far as like heavy lifting versus lifting lighter weights, it's a combination, right? It's because, you know, it's not good enough just to lift one way. I guess, how do I say this? We want to surf the curve. That's the idea here is, and so what that means is, you know, you have like your low weight, high repetition stuff that would be more like muscular endurance, like how long can you sustain a contraction? And then you have your max strength, your 2, 3, 4 rep efforts that are slow and grindy and just like really, really tough. And then you have everything in between. And so you have to, you know, in jiu-jitsu, you don't get to pick which one of those you use at any given time. You kind of have to have it all.
Good point.
And so the way we structure our phases, like if we're doing like a typical 4-week phase, week 1 is our deload week. Actually, that's when we kind of bring things down a notch. Because we want to teach new movements. It's not as high volume. It's not as high weight. We're still looking for like a 7 out of 10 intensity, because you need to be within 1 to 3 reps of technical failure for any of this to take. If it's not, it's just, there's not enough stimulus there. So we're looking for about a 7 out of 10 on week 1. It's new stuff. It's only 2 sets, so people get a break. They get kind of like let their body kind of reacclimate. Week 2, we go higher volume. So like 3 sets of 8, say. But because they're sets of 8 instead of 10, we can go up in weight just a little bit, right? Again, looking for maybe an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
And then week 3, we're looking at 6s. So lower volume, higher intensity. 9 out of 10 is kind of what we're aiming for. And then on that week 4, we call it send it week. Then you're looking for, those are 4s, and we're looking for 10 out of 10. You should have no reps left in the tank. It should be max effort, max intensity. And then we, reassess. We say, okay, what do we need to change? Do we need to add something? Do we need to take something away? Do we need to stay here? Does this person need more work on this movement pattern, or what is it that they need? And then we come back to the first week, right? And do it again.
Wow.
So that's the philosophy behind it, is we try to get all of those in, because if you're not training one of them, you're detraining it, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're only doing sets of 4, you're getting good at pushing things for 4, but as soon as you need to sustain a contraction for 20, 30, 40 seconds, forget it. Like you don't have anything. So
and how does that relate to jiu-jitsu training? Do you kind of when you're going into the heaviest week, are you encouraging athletes to do less on the mats, or keep the workload the same?
No, they can keep the workload the same. I mean, we adjust on the minute, honestly. Like we have a plan, but based on how that person walks into the gym that day, and I mean from how they walk into the gym, not just like, how are you doing? It's like we're looking at body language. Are they like slumped over? Are they standing up tall? Do they come in and say hi, or do they come in and just put their stuff down? Like all of these little tiny things go into the decision whether or not we push really hard today, or if we need to take some off of it, and then there are some like qualitative, or I guess quantitative questions that they answer like on their program before they start, so that we've got a pretty good idea as to where they're at, or where they think they're at. And so I would say they can train as much as they want. We may have a conversation here or there if they like really aren't recovering. But no, I mean, I guess the only time we would scale that down is on comp week.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's like a competition week. We'll tell people, like, hey, like, if they're competing on Saturday, they can lift on Monday. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But anywhere past like Tuesday, Wednesday, you're just coming in to do your mobility, your movement prep, and your power stuff, and then you're leaving the strength stuff off to the side. And then I'll tell them, like, really, you should just be drilling this week. Very light rolls, if anything at all, up until like Wednesday, and then just seriously like rest.
Yeah.
Because too many times I see so many people just absolutely crush themselves right up until Friday and expect to perform, and it never goes well.
Yeah. And how much are you educating the athletes on nutrition, hydration type of recovery? Because that's something where I'm lacking. Like I'll do ice baths, I'll do sauna, all that stuff, but then I'm like, I didn't quite nail the macros. I didn't quite do this or that.
Hydration is a big one for sure. That one, we'll coach people on. The nutrition stuff, I mean, everybody's so different, and what they need and I feel like it'd be tough to comment on. I mean, we tell people to eat intuitively. So your body knows what it wants. It knows what it craves. Like I'm sure, been to the end of a workout, I'm like, I need protein. Like yep. Your body just knows. It knows what it wants. And so we try to coach them in that, and listening to their, hunger cues and what it is that they need. But I wouldn't say outside of that we do much.
Okay. No, that's great. I'm sorry, I've got a lot of questions, so I'm just trying
I'm here for it, man.
Organized. So what about the types of weights? Are you doing like Olympic lifts? Are you doing kettlebells? What does it look like, a typical workout?
We do some of all those things. It just depends. It depends on, I hate that cop-out answer, right? It depends. As far as Olympic lifts, I like Olympic lifts. We do have some people hang clean. We have had some people like snatch. But ultimately it comes down to what can they do? So if somebody doesn't have the overhead mobility, that doesn't do me any good to put that in their program. Like, it's just not going to work. So if that's the case, then we'll use sandbags. So like you can do a lot of like sandbag cleans are great, especially for older grapplers, because typically older grapplers don't have that overhead mobility.
Yeah, we're all fucked up. We are
or they don't have the shoulder mobility or the wrist mobility to get into like a full, rack position.
Yep.
And so like sandbags are great for that because it's easier on the joints, but you can train the same things. And actually, honestly, that 75-pound sandbag feels heavier than a 135-pound barbell. It just does, because it moves differently. And honestly, for jujitsu, it makes so much sense because the sand moves around, people move around. There's no time during a match are you going to handle something that is as densely packed and uniformly balanced as a barbell. And so
that's true. Yeah.
So the sandbags are great. We use a lot of kettlebells. I would say, like, from a strength perspective, we prioritize unilateral lifts more than probably anything else. That's not to say we don't lift bilaterally. And for those listening that don't know what that is, it's just 2 legs or 2 arms at a time. So like your conventional deadlift would be a bilateral lift, and a single leg deadlift would be unilateral. So we do deadlift, we do squat in those kind of traditional ways, but there's a heavy emphasis on split squats, lunges, moving side to side, like lateral lunges, slider lunges, things like that. So I would say that's more or less how we structure it. And then as far as like the loading mechanisms, you mentioned, like barbells for Olympic lifts or kettlebells, we use dumbbells, kettlebells, sandbags, barbells, all of those things in our training. The idea is variation without change. So what does that mean? There are fundamental movement patterns: squat, hinge, push, pull, carry, anti-core movements, so like anti-extension, anti-lateral flexion, anti-rotation. And then you could throw like lunges in there too, if you wanted. And so we will teach people those movement patterns, and all of our, our strength blocks kind of are centered around getting all of those in. And then as people get good at them, then we can vary the tempo, or we can vary the implement, whether it's dumbbell or kettlebell or sandbag, or the load position. Is it in the suitcase position by your sides, or is it in a goblet position, or is it in the rack position, or is it on the shoulder, or is it there's any number of ways that you can do it. And so that's how we vary each of those movements without having to change everything all the time, because that's where I think a lot of people make a mistake, is they want to change things up so often that they never get good at anything. And you got to really stick with it. But if you're going to like make any progress there, if you change your workout every single week, there's no way you can tell, like, am I actually improving at this thing? So, somebody may have like a hinge pattern in for 6 months in a row, but it may be like a trap bar deadlift, then a B stance trap bar deadlift, then a front foot elevated B stance trap bar deadlift. So now we've like just made little tweaks to that one movement pattern, but got a lot more out of it than we would have if we just did trap bar deadlift one day and then, moved on to something else the next day. So
gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I want to ask you about the bilateral versus unilateral. If you had to pick one, what would you recommend?
Unilateral.
Why?
There's nothing. So if I'm just like, we'll talk like unilateral lower body, for instance. There's nothing that challenges your midfoot, ankle, knee, hip, and back, or core for that matter, more than a unilateral lift. That's the first thing. The second thing is the orthopedic cost is way lower, meaning I can get the same adaptation using a quarter of the weight. So here's what I mean. If I were doing a single leg deadlift with 50% of my body weight for 4 reps would be the equivalent of twice my body weight for a bilateral lift for 4 reps. Right? Like, say I weigh 200 pounds, I have 100 pounds in my hands somehow, and I'm doing, my single leg deadlift. That's as if I were deadlifting 400 pounds.
Wow.
4 times, right? Like and being able to do it with only 100 means my risk is way lower. People stay healthier longer. It is more like, I guess it transfers better to sport.
Yeah.
Right? It's just you think about, we walk one leg at a time, we run one leg at a time. When you're passing the guard, you're very rarely, if ever, 50-50 on both feet, right?
Yeah.
That almost never happens. And so prioritizing that unilateral strength, and in this case, when we're talking about the legs, it just translates better overall.
Yeah.
From an upper body perspective, like this will be a hot take you put on Instagram. We don't really bench press people.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it's wrong. The bench press, I mean, we have some people who are bench pressing, but that's after they've satisfied certain prerequisites. So like, I don't know if you've heard the term like scap free or scap fixed. So like a push-up would be scap free because your shoulder blades can move on the rib cage. Bench press would be scap fixed because you're, kind of pressing your shoulder blades together and making a little plate behind you while you press.
Yep.
So when it comes to, we think about like, what is the purpose of the shoulder blade? Well, the shoulder blade is supposed to move on the rib cage, so it helps keep the shoulder bone on the socket, right? If the shoulder blade doesn't move on the rib cage the way it's supposed to move, then that's where you get like shoulder impingements or torn labrums. It's just like you lack the prerequisite function, like the function of the joint kind of diminishes. And so we prioritize scap free movements before scap fixed ones, because if the shoulder blade doesn't move well, then what's the point? Like that's ultimately what we want to get to, because in jiu-jitsu, you can't not move your scapula. It's going to have to move.
Yeah.
So we train people like first, like we're talking about like just pressing stuff. We'll like just teach them how to do a push-up. And then, we may do like several push-up variations for a little while. And then we'll move to like from bilateral scap free to unilateral scap free. And we'll keep it horizontal because tends to be more shoulder friendly. And then as they get that, then we'll move to like a modified vertical press, scap free still. And then if they have the shoulder mobility, we'll do like a full scap free vertical press because they can get into that position. And then once they've satisfied all of that, then we'll bench press them, because all of those, like I said, the shoulder blade needs to be able to do what it's going to do before I'm going to teach you anything else. Because if it doesn't, then that's just where injury happens.
Yeah.
So like I said, I don't have anything against the bench press. And I would say if I were to prioritize any bench press over another one, it'd be dumbbells over barbell, just because sometimes people's like my shoulders don't like the barbell. They won't do it.
Yeah, mine don't.
Yeah. And so dumbbells just make more sense for me.
Yeah.
My hands can move, my elbows can move, my shoulders can be in the position they want to be in. And so, I would prioritize that over the barbell. Now, if somebody gets all the way to the end of the dumbbells and they crush it and they feel good and they're like, I want to see how much I can fucking lift. And I'm like, all right, you've earned the right.
Yeah. Now, are those prerequisites the same for like a deadlift? Because I can imagine you want to get that scap fixed position, right, on a deadlift.
Yeah, you definitely want to like stabilize everything there. But
I hate deadlifts, by the way. I freaking hate deadlifts.
Really?
Oh, I hate them.
They're one of my favorite lifts, man.
My ass. My heart rate spikes so hard with that. I don't know why. It's just that
anxiety thing. Just like
probably. It could be.
I wouldn't say no. I mean, we don't. As far as like the scap free, scap fixed thing, it doesn't play any role in our decision to deadlift somebody or not.
Gotcha.
But we do coach that. I mean, and the way actually we do it is, I'll take my fist and just like put it underneath my armpit, or like tell somebody like put a tennis ball in their armpit and like try to squeeze the tennis ball as hard as they can. And that alone is like a really, really good cue for just getting people to like drive their shoulder blades back and really, really pin them. Yeah. So anyways, that's that.
I will tell you my love-hate relationship with the sled. And the hate is the obvious, right? But the love is like my knees feel amazing when I do sled work. Not during, but after sled work. I'm telling you, for a few days, like my knees feel amazing. What is it about the sled work?
There's no eccentric component, which is where most of the like mechanical tension and muscle damage, so to speak, comes from. So it's purely concentric. And so you can really, like, we love sleds, especially for competitors, especially when they're competing a lot, because you don't accumulate, you can like work really hard, but you don't accumulate a lot of soreness. And so that's why ultimately, their sleds are great. We use those a lot.
Yeah. My trainer, his name's Vin. He's I struggle saying he's a great guy. He's a nice guy. Oh, I tease him a lot, but I love him. But this is how he gets in my head. And I'm sure you have your methods, right? I'm sure every individual has a way. But the way he gets me is like, he'll put weight on a sled and he briefly tells me what I'm going to do. And I think he does that on purpose to make sure I'm paying attention, but he'll say, yeah, just let me know if that's too light, or no, let me know if that's too heavy. I'm gonna look like, what did he just say? So that's how he gets me. I'm serious. And it's like stupid, but I'm so competitive and he knows it. Like, and I know what he's doing and he knows what he's doing, but he does it and it works every single time. I have pushed out of my shoes. I have come out of my shoes just to prove him wrong. And yeah. So anyway, but that's my relationship with Vin.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah. But so if you have somebody, let's just say you have somebody off the couch and you do your assessment, when do you, it's hard for me to say because I'm the type of person that likes to be pushed, but how do you develop that relationship? I know it develops over time, but with somebody coming off the couch, do you kind of like, do you have is it a one-on-one conversation before you guys start training together to see if it's a good fit, or how do you find that relationship? How do you build that relationship up front?
Yeah. So everybody starts with what we call a strategy session. So we just sit down. It's, whoever the prospect, whoever it is that is looking to come in, and a coach, whether it's me or one of our other coaches. And we talk about goals. We talk about obstacles, medical, injury history, schedule, time, budget, everything that we could possibly talk about. We kind of compile all that information, and then we make a professional recommendation on, what it is that we think they should do. Should they decide to sign up, then the next step is to schedule a movement assessment. And so then their first time in the gym, I should say this, the strategy session is on Google Meet, so we can do it anywhere, which is great. Then their first time in the gym, it would be the movement assessment. That's where we go through the CARS assessment. We go through the FMS, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but is the functional movement screen. Was created by Gray Cook, world-renowned physical therapist, and Mike Boyle. And it's like a 7 exercise assessment. We use the CARS assessment to figure out how does each joint move on its own individually of the others. Is there any aberrant joint function? Is there any gross discrepancy from side to side? Is there anything that we need to look out for? Do their toes work properly? And then we go into the FMS. So from there, we're looking at how do these joints move in conjunction with each other, right? Because life doesn't happen one joint at a time. Life happens in chains, like we talked about. And so we go through the movement, or we go through the FMS, and that's scored on it's a 4-point scale, 0 to 3, 3 being like best I've ever seen, 2 being pretty good, but there's something wrong. 1 being can't do it, 0 being pain. And so that kind of, those things alongside the strategy session guide our decision making when it comes to like building the program. Yeah. So that's the long and short of it.
No, that's great. That's a very thorough way to do it. So if you were going to put that in jiu-jitsu terms, well, and you were an academy owner, would you do something similar for new students? So what do you think?
I don't know.
He has these grandiose ideas, right? Of like maybe do like a private lesson first and stuff like that. But
I don't know if anybody has the manpower to do that. I understand the thought process behind it. I don't know the answer. I wish I did, and I'm sure when I open my own academy, I will experiment. But I guess off the top of my head, I think it would be helpful to maybe put people through. I mean, especially if they come in, they're like, I have 0 experience with jiu-jitsu. A intro class would be really helpful. I think just this is a shrimp. This is a this is a hip escape. Because I mean I remember, and this is nobody's fault, but I remember my first day and people being like hip escape, and I'm like, what the heck? And nobody really showed me. I just kind of like did it. I looked around and I was like, oh, I think I can do that. And maybe somebody came over and was like, put your foot here or do this or whatever. But there wasn't any like formal education around it. I maybe wish I had had that. I actually have a funny story about this. It was my second week, and Yuri Samois was one of my coaches. And he, bless him, I'm in I'm rolling with another white belt, and I'm, like I said, I'm 2 weeks old in jiu-jitsu years. And he's like, omoplata, Matt, omoplata. I'm like, I don't know what that is.
I know you're saying words, but yeah, it's not. Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about. So,
oh my gosh, that's great. My very first class was Berimbolo. That was my very first jiu-jitsu class. Yeah. So we roll, back roll, hip escape. I had no idea what I was doing. Then all of a sudden I was 240 pounds too, 238. And the reason I know that is because I weighed myself before my very first jiu-jitsu class. Because when I did triathlon for a few years, and my last triathlon, I was 167 pounds on my last triathlon. And then I got big and fat, and then I went to do jiu-jitsu. But so I'm trying to do this inverted, now that I didn't even know what inverted was in jiu-jitsu terms back then, but I'm trying to do it over this belly, you know what I mean? And I just kind of sat there. I'm gonna sit this one out, boys. I'll just watch. But they were very patient and very kind, and so it was cool.
And that's one thing I love about Vitor is like he just gets it. His bedside manner is so nice. Yeah. You can't help but want to do well for him. And he's a great coach, and if you can't do something, he takes the time to walk you through it. And so yeah, totally.
Yeah, man. Well, listen, man, we've been going for a little over an hour, and I want to be respectful of your time. And I want to thank you so much, because I know I canceled on you twice.
It's totally okay. Don't worry about it. I totally understand. Life is busy.
And I had to take, I had to take the sales appointment. So I had
for what it's worth, I in talking to D, he did mention, he's like, Alex runs a gym like I've never seen before. Like he's a great business person. And I'm like, all right, cool. Like I get it. So when you were like, hey, I got a bunch of new trials, I'm like, I would reschedule too if I had a bunch of new trials. So I get it, man. No worries.
We've got we've got such a great group of people. It's amazing because we went through a little bit of a stint where we lost a bunch of students, and you don't really take it personally, but it hurts. You know what I mean? From a personal standpoint, because I mean, from a business standpoint, it kind of is what it is. I understand the business. And I got some really good advice from a lot of really good people, just, about patience and, understanding, like, that, one door closes, the other one opens. The people that are walking through the door right now are just amazing. It's just
great.
Yeah. They're and not just in the sense that like, wow, these guys are going to make an impact. No, they fit the vibe.
That's cool.
That we have. And I'm so excited, man.
Man.
24 is going to be awesome.
Your vibe attracts your tribe. So that's great.
That's right. Yeah. So tell us where we can find you. Any social medias, any YouTubes, anything like that?
Yeah. We're on social media so the gym is at Victory Submission Strength. My personal is at matt.jits.hugh. So like Matt Jitsu, I guess. And then if anybody is listening and they're interested, they can go to our website, which is victorysubmissionstrength.com. We've got a great competition warm-up, like a free competition warm-up on there that people can download. It includes like the cars stuff. So if you're interested in cars, add that to your routine. I honestly, like, if you do nothing that I said at all today, except the cars, you will write me a thank you note in 5 years. I promise. It's real powerful stuff. So I would say, victorysubmissionstrength.com, at Victory Submission Strength for Instagram for the gym, and then at matt.jits.hugh.
Got it. All right, Matt. Well, thank you for being on the show, man. It's been a pleasure. And if you're ever in Arizona, hit me up, and
I'll have
you over the academy. And if you're ever doing like seminars in the area, let me know. Love to attend it. Love to learn more.
I would love to. That would be great. I'll look at the schedule next year. We're going to look to do some more travel, try to get outside the Bay Area, Vegas, Phoenix area. So we'll be around for sure.
Awesome, buddy. You have a great weekend. Well, what's left of it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Alex.
Good.